Hello world, welcome to this video. My name is Tyler. Before I get into anything, I just want to touch on the elephant in the room and say that I'm so sorry for abandoning you guys. I haven't uploaded a video in about a month or so. I apologize. I've just been trying to figure out what's next for me in life, but I'm back now, and not only am I coming to you with a new video today, but I'm also coming to you with a new uploading schedule. I'll be uploading a new video to this channel every Tuesday. The videos will range from book reviews, book discussions, annotate with me's, reading vlogs, book shopping vlogs, anything and everything books. But with that being said, welcome to this channel. If you're new, hello, thank you for being here. I'm happy that you found me. Hello to all of my OG subscribers. This channel is growing so quickly. I have almost 800 subscribers and I couldn't be more thankful. So thank you guys. This video is all about annotating. If you don't know what annotating is to add notes to a text or a diagram giving explanation or comment. When you are annotating a book, you are interacting with the book. You are becoming one with the book. You are speaking to and with the book. Annotating usually involves highlighting, underlining, circling, and making notes in the margins. In my personal opinion, not only is annotating very helpful, but it is also very necessary. In order for me to digest, understand, absorb anything that I'm reading, I have to annotate the text. And you know what? I know that annotating is a little bit of a controversial thing. Some people feel like you should never write in your books. Other people, like me, feel like writing in your books is super helpful and they enjoy it. It's whatever you feel is best. I personally have no naked books, but that's just me. So what types of things do I write in my books? I obviously am constantly highlighting things. I highlight more things than I don't highlight. Underline certain words or phrases to put more emphasis on them if I feel like they're super important. Put boxes around them. Sometimes I circle words that I don't know and write in definitions of those words after looking them up so that I'm constantly learning new words. Question marks next to phrases or paragraphs that I don't necessarily understand that I want to come back to later. Exclamation points next to points in the book that I agree with 100%. Yes, whenever I feel like something is just speaking to me, I will write down my opinion or thoughts about what it is that I'm reading in order to correlate the text and my thoughts together. I'm just applying it to my life. Do I annotate all of my books? The answer is yes, but I do annotate the most in self-help books or more spiritual books because in those books I am learning about myself essentially and other people. So I feel like taking notes is super necessary, but I do annotate in nonfiction books and memoirs, for example. Also, it's just maybe not as often. Okay, so with all that being said, today I'm gonna take you along for the ride. You're gonna annotate with me. Today we're gonna be annotating A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I talked about this book in my last video. It is more of a spiritual book, but whether or not you're a spiritual person, hopefully you can take a little something away from today's video. The section that I'm gonna be annotating with you is all about the ego, which is something that we all have, something we all have to deal with, and frankly, it's something we all need to learn a little bit more about. So I hope you enjoy this video. Let's just jump right into the video, shall we? Before we get started, thank you for being here. Happy you're joining me. This is really exciting. Never did a video like this before, but I'm really Happy that you're here. So let's get started. I am reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I talked about this book in my most recent video, and I'm really loving this book. I've learned a whole lot so far, still learning, feeling very smart, and I want to share a little bit of it with you for any of you who have not picked this up yet or who are interested in more spiritual books and self-help books. This chapter that I'm on, chapter 3, is called The Core of Ego, and so far it's been talking about what the ego thrives off of, how it survives, and I'll briefly go over what I've already read. As you can see, I do highlight quite a bit. I highlight more than I don't highlight, and I also write notes as I go. A lot of it is just me rewording what I already read so that I better understand what it is that I read, and it just sticks in my mind a lot better when I do it that way. So let me know if you guys do the same thing. I kind of have to do it this way or else I will not retain information, and I don't mind it. So in the beginning of the chapter, it's talking about the egoic mind, and that people who are really identified with the voice in their head, we can refer to as being kind of possessed by their mind. They're so engulfed in the thinking and the emotions that come with that. That is the egoic mind. We call it the egoic mind, Eckhart says, because there is a sense of self there, the I, which he's talked about previously. When you say I like this, or I am shy, or I am mean, that is referring to the ego. That is not you necessarily. He started talking about what the ego consists of. The ego consists of thoughts and emotions, a bundle of memories that you identify with as me and my story, of habitual roles you play without knowing it, collective identifications such as nationality, religion, race, social class, or political allegiance. The ego also contains personal identifications. When I read this, I thought about the fact that people identify with depression. So they may be feeling depressed. They may have been depressed in the past, but to say you are a depressed person is a little bit different. You're now at that point identifying with that. It's identifying with a concept of yourself. I'm going to write depression as an example. The content of the ego varies from person to person. This part was really interesting. But egos only differ on the surface. Deep down, they are all the same. So even though the ego is different, my ego is different from your ego, they all kind of thrive off of the same thing. They thrive off of identification and separation. The ego, all of our egos, are constantly struggling to survive. They're trying to protect and enlarge in themselves. In order to do this, they need an opposite, and this is the thought of the other, which can be referred to as enemies. I said that like it's a good thing. So in this part of the chapter, which we're going to go through together, he talks about complaining and resentment. He says, complaining is one of the ego's favorite strategies for strengthening itself. So I'm going to highlight this whole sentence because I love it. It sums it up perfectly. So when someone is complaining, it's not them that is complaining, it's their ego complaining. Every complaint is a little story the mind makes up that you completely believe in. So the ego believes in this. Whether you complain aloud or only in thought makes no difference. Some egos that perhaps don't have much else to identify with easily survive on complaining alone. I don't know if you guys can think of somebody who you know who just complains way too much, but there's almost nothing to them except the fact that they complain a lot anytime they're speaking. It's a complaint, and when you think of them, you just think of someone who complains a lot. That is because they don't have much else to identify with, which is pretty sad. I'm gonna highlight this. When you're in the grip of such an ego, complaining, especially about other people, is habitual and, of course, unconscious, which means you don't know what you are doing. He talks about unconsciousness, of course, a lot in this book, and that is just literally being unconscious, not aware. Very very unaware of what's going on. Applying negative mental labels to people, either to their face or more commonly when you speak about them to others, or even just think about them, is often part of this pattern. This is the ego working. Exclamation points. Name calling is the crudest form of such labeling. Name calling. And of the ego's need to be right and triumph over others. The ego always needs to be right, even when it's not. Very hard to argue with these kinds of people. Now we're moving on to resentment. I'm going to put a box around that word. Resentment. Resentment is the emotion that goes with complaining and the mental labeling of people and adds even more energy to the ego. So resentment is the emotion that goes with complaining. So if you're someone who complains a lot, you have some sort of resentment, I think is what he's saying. Resentment means to feel bitter, indignant, aggrieved, or offended. You resent other people's greed, their dishonesty, their lack of integrity, what they're doing, what they did in the past, what they said, what they failed to do, what they should or shouldn't have done. That sounds really draining to even think about all that all the time. But I'm going to highlight bitter, indignant, aggrieved, and offended. The ego loves it. Instead of overlooking unconsciousness in others, you make it into their identity. Do you guys, when someone does something wrong or is being dishonest, do you consider them a dishonest person, or do you look at it as them being unconscious? Because I think that now at this point, after having read some of this book, I think that I am more likely to just look at them as being unconscious. I started to realize that the things that people do have a reason, like there is a root cause for everything. And so I look at people as being unconscious. I don't necessarily say that they are a dishonest person or that this person is dishonest. Sometimes the fault that you perceive in another isn't even there. It is a total misinterpretation. The fault that you perceive in another isn't even there. Total misinterpretation. Conditioned to see enemies and to make itself right or superior. So you're telling me that if I see something in someone, I may not even be seeing anything. I'm creating it in my mind so that I feel better about myself? No freaking way. Oh, it says, and what you react to in another, you strengthen in yourself. Non-reaction to the ego in others is one of the most effective ways not only of going beyond ego in yourself, but also of dissolving the collective human ego. So, I'm going to put a box around non-reaction to the ego. Eckhart talks about a collective human ego or collective human dysfunction a lot in this book. A collective dysfunction is the dysfunction of a group of people. Most of the time, it's a group of people who all have similar thoughts and ideologies. I'm going to write this quote down because it's so good. This one about non-reaction. When you realize it's not personal, there's no longer a compulsion to react as if it were. That's the thing. When you realize that something's not personal, you don't react. When you realize that it's coming from someone's ego and it's not really them speaking, there's no point in reacting because you're not talking to them. You're talking to their ego, and you're usually going to get a negative response, in my opinion. By not reacting to the ego, you will often be able to bring out the sanity in others. Yes. Ooh, this part is good. It says, at times you may have to take practical steps to protect yourself from deeply unconscious people. This is so true. If you don't protect yourself from unconscious people, it can be dangerous and exhausting. That's what I realized. Your greatest protection, however, is being conscious. Yes. Somebody becomes an enemy if you personalize the unconsciousness that is the ego. Non-reaction is not weakness, but strength. I love this. I'm going to highlight can do without making them into enemies. I'm going to write being conscious is your greatest, did he say protection? Protection from unconscious people. Never thought of it that way. Non-reaction is not a weakness, but a strength. Another word for non-reaction is forgiveness. Ooh, I'm writing that down. That's good. To forgive is to overlook, or rather to look through. To forgive. The ego loves to complain and feel resentful not only about other people, but also about situations. What you can do to a person, you can also do to a situation. Make it into an enemy. Ooh, you can make a situation into an enemy. That is so true. The implication is always, this should not be happening. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. I'm being treated unfairly. And the ego's greatest enemy of all is, of course, the present moment, which is to say life itself. So I'm going to write down an example for me, which is work. I don't feel this way anymore, but in one of my past jobs, I would feel very much like this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. And I was resentful about the situation. It wasn't about a specific person. It wasn't about anybody at the job, but I was just resentful of the job itself. And this makes so much sense. Wow. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. Okay, I didn't know this. Awareness and ego cannot, well, that makes sense because the ego is unaware. So put a star next to that. I'm not going to go into reactivity and grievances because it's a whole nother section. But let me know if you enjoyed this and if you want me to do it again. I really liked annotating with you guys. It's fun. You learn something new. I get further in my book. Everyone wins.